Here, people think in terms of first aid, security, and sanctuary. And there's so many people who've been trained in doing this that there's a solid core of volunteers available just about anywhere. So these are being done in many other places. So we have a bunch of principles, but the most, actually I'll back up a little bit. Initially when we were doing the harm reduction stuff, we thought, okay, we're giving people information that they already know. And we're talking about minimizing harm, but talking about harm is sort of a bummer. And is there a different way to do it? And at the time I was doing my master's degree, and it was in liberal studies, and so there were traces of my interdisciplinary masters in all of this. And I started to wonder about, we talk about set and set in. And I thought all this harm reduction stuff we talk about is really aimed at the individual. We expect the individual to do something different, to either be differently in a space, or to use something we're going to provide them, or to change their own behavior. And I just really had a problem with that. And I thought, why do we always make it the individual's problem to behave differently? Is there a way we can shift the setting? Can we change the space so that people just do whatever the hell they want to do in the space, but it plays out differently because somehow the space is different, it offers different possibilities. And for those of you who read anything on constructivist theory, you might recognize that there's a little bit of sort of constructivism here. So the real key thing is we're thinking about, when you interact with someone, you build your attitudes to what's going on, the way you construct what's happening in front of you. So we didn't like the idea of being with psychedelic first aid, because first aid means you're broken, and we're going to fix you, and then you're going to go. And we thought that's not what we're about. We don't want to see people as broken. We want to see people as whole. We don't want to see them as injured. We want to see them as maybe struggling, which is a little bit different. And we also, really thinking. And if you think yourself, what are the things that you've learned the most from? It probably wasn't the really great time. It was probably the time that really sucked. When something happened that was just horrible. That's often where we learn the most from. And thinking about trips, the trips that often have the most incredible lasting impact on our lives are the ones that were very difficult to do. The ones we had some kind of personal breakthrough or understanding or connection with nature or the universe or whatever. Often they're not the pleasant ones. And so we decided this was going to be one of our core values, that there's no such thing as a bad trip. It's just trips which are easier to navigate than others. And so what we wanted to do was help people, facilitate people navigating difficult trips. So as a result, we don't try and bring anyone down. And we don't try and make them have a good trip. And the reason for this is that, I'll cover some of the reasons, but there are a whole lot of things as to why we want to do this. But mostly we didn't want to interrupt the possibility of somebody having that spiritual breakthrough, making it all the way, through to some place where they're just going to have this amazing realization about themselves or about existence or something like that. And if we try to bring them down, we could potentially cut off this possibly life-changing event. So we thought what we want to do is actually provide a place where people can have these kinds of experiences. So, in a sense, if the worse somebody's doing, the more right they are for having this amazing spiritual breakthrough was kind of how we were going with this. And so it's also based on this idea that we kind of co-create our experience. It's based on this notion of a dialogic constitution itself that, if I'm interacting with you, who you are in our interaction is actually, we co-create each other, we co-evoke each other. And it's not that you turn out as perfectly you and then you just perform yourself. Like the parts of you that come out are going to be the parts that I evoke or that you resonate with or something like that. So we thought, okay, we're not going to construct people as injured or suffering or as being lacking in skill. We're going to construct people as being on the verge of a spiritual breakthrough, incredibly rich with skills, in a supportive environment where this kind of thing can happen. And just by thinking, this sounds really wacky, but just by taking that approach, it automatically shifts the way you actually interact with people. And so if you're not seeing them as broken, you don't treat them as broken. If you see them as whole, you treat them differently. And so for our volunteers, this is a very big piece of it. And the other thing is we really want to build on what's there. So if people come in with a group of friends, then that's their resources. They came in with their resources. We need to work with those resources right there. And so we really thought about how do we handle groups of people. We don't necessarily want to separate people, but those people might be high. They may actually need to take care of themselves. And so we kind of try to work through all of that stuff. And the overarching theory, if you like, is that we wanted to move beyond harm reduction, and we wanted to talk about benefit maximization. If you remember the spectrum of substance use that was put up in the previous presentation, they had that spectrum that went all the way from harmful through problematic, non-problematic to beneficial. We hope that what happens with the sanctuary is we sort of move people towards the more beneficial end of the spectrum. Because we don't believe that drug use equals drug abuse at all. So furthermore, we recognize that getting high is a skillful activity. It's something you have to learn to do. And our approach is to sort of evoke the skillful psychonaut. So everyone who comes in, clearly they're psychonautic. You don't take 10 hits of acid if you're not, in for it. And so rather than treat them as stupid, it's like, okay, you're an adventurer, you're exploring these realms, let's support you in exploring these realms. And again, a lot of this is attitudinal, but it really shifts the way people respond to what's actually happening in front of them. We also didn't want to see people as lacking in skills. We wanted to see people as resourceful and take, very much, I'm sort of blanking on the word, strengths-based approach. That's what they call it. So take a strengths-based approach, see everyone, see the little social groups that come in as having the capacity to take care of themselves and maybe just needing a place to do it or just a little bit of support so that they can discover within themselves the resources that they have. And a lot of what we do is about sort of positive reinforcement. We tell people, it's really great you came in, it's really good you're with your friends, so we do a lot of positive stroking. And the whole bigger picture behind this is that if we want the party scene to be sustainable, we have to not impact, the hospital emergency rooms, the police, and so on. We have to find a way to deal with what's going on within the scene. Because the more we impact on the world out there, the more they're likely to say, what you're doing is not okay and we want you to stop. So resilience is a big piece of this. We believe people definitely have the capacity to make it through just about everything. Obviously, there are some cases where it's not true, but we will go in with the going-in assumption that they can. And the way we interact with people is this idea of, I'm probably jumping slides ahead here, but we're not going to fix people. We're not going to do stuff for them. But what we're going to help them discover is their own capacity to actually manage what they're experiencing. Because Shambhala happens once a year, but they're going to party all year round. So they're going to be somewhere else at some other time and get into trouble, and they need to know that they can actually manage it. The other thing is we also started out, many of us who were involved in this scene were really interested in community. And we were a dance community. We put on a lot of community events. We use the word community a lot. And it struck me that if we really were a community, what were some of the things we would have? What do communities have? And communities have elders. They have people who are the sort of repository of information. So we want to have like elder partiers, people who know how to party well. They know how to really maximize an LSD trip, or how to really have a fantastic night to pace yourself just right, and so on. And also there were a lot of people who've been in the scene a long time. They love the music, they love the people, but they just really couldn't face going to another 4-day music festival and getting fucked up and doing the same old thing. We wanted more. So we thought, okay, in a community, in a real community, you have a lot of social roles, and you have these roles of elders, and maybe the sanctuary can be a way that we can enact being an elder. So it doesn't mean being old. Some of our elders are only 17, but they've been partying for years. But it's this idea of bringing your wisdom. It's about giving back. It's about turning up in the community in a way that isn't just about yourself. And what we found was that a lot of people wanted to volunteer for us who otherwise would not have gone to the festival. Because for them, this is a new way to turn up in the space, and a new way to sort of see themselves as growing in the community, and a way to experience the community as a community. And the end result was that we kind of just seeded the communities with all these peer resources, people who were trained, who had an experience of doing this kind of work, who sort of got this idea that there could be more to the scene than just going somewhere on the weekend, dancing your ass off, and then going home. So I figured we can't do a workshop on psychedelic crisis management without some practical tips. So I'm going to touch on some here. The very first thing, and this is something we talk about with our volunteers, is to say, what is it that we're doing? And we really distinguish between guiding, trip sitting, and facilitating. Do you know what guiding and trip sitting would be? Does anyone want to say what guiding is? What do you think guiding is? Go for it.
I'd like to say the left shouldn't